Close your eyes and imagine this. It's the 1930s. Banks are collapsing, families are losing their homes, millions are unemployed, the world feels like it's ending. But in the middle of that chaos, something unexpected is born, a shining light, Hollywood. Because here's the paradox. While the Great Depression was tearing economies apart, it was also building the foundation of global film industry we know today. How could one of the darkest economic chapters create one of the brightest cultural icons? The Great Depression officially began in 1929, right after the stock market crash on Wall Street. In just a few days, billions of dollars in wealth evaporated, but the real impact, it came after. By 1933, almost 1 in every 4 Americans were unemployed. That's over 12 million people with no job, no income, and no safety net. Thousands of banks collapsed, wiping out people's life savings overnight. Farms were abandoned as prices for wheat and cotton collapsed. Cities were filled with breadlines and soup kitchens. Globally, it wasn't just the US. Economies in Europe and Asia also spiraled down. International trade shrank by more than 50%. The entire world economy was in free fall. And yet, in the middle of this financial apocalypse, one industry wasn't just surviving, it was thriving. Movie theaters. By the early 1930s, more than 60 to 80 million Americans were going to the movies every week. That's half the population during the worst economic crisis in modern history.
So the question is how? How could people who had no money for food still find money for a movie ticket?
Here's the strange truth. While millions of Americans could not afford basic necessities, many of them still found 25 cents for a movie ticket. Why? Because in the middle of despair, movies became more than entertainment. They become survival. For just a quarter, you could escape a reality. Instead of standing in breadlines, you could sit in a dark theater and watch glamorous stars, exotic adventures, and happy endings.
Movies gave people something the economy couldn't, like hope, distraction, and a few hours of dignity.
Hollywood understood this perfectly. Studios leaned into the demand of escapism. They produced lavish musicals with big dance numbers, romantic comedies where love always won, gangster films that turned poverty and crime into a thrilling drama. Even animated features started to rise. Walt Disney's Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs premiered in 1937, becoming the first full-length animated film and a massive hit. It wasn't just about the content though. Hollywood also had the business model, a studio system locked in actors, directors, and theaters under one roof. Studios like MGM, Paramount, and Warner Bros. Owned everything from production to distribution to the very theaters people sat in. That control meant efficiency and a steady stream of film even when the economy was collapsing. And here's the irony. The Great Depression actually helped solidify Hollywood's power. Independent studios went bankrupt, leaving the Big Five and Little Three to dominate the market. By the late 1930s, the Hollywood system was stronger than ever. So while Main Street was closing its doors, Hollywood was opening new ones. And in the process, it wasn't just entertaining America, it was shaping cultures, values, and even how people dream. When we step back, the success of Hollywood during the Great Depression wasn't an accident. It was the result of 3 powerful forces working together. First, the economic's cheap escape. A movie ticket costs about 25 cents, compared to the other forms of leisure, like sports event or travel. Cinema was the most affordable form of entertainment. Even families struggling to buy food could sometimes scrape together enough for a Saturday night at the movies. This made film a low-cost luxury, a small indulgence that people desperately needed. Second, the psychology of resilience. In times of crisis, humans look for stories, for meaning, for distraction, for hope. Hollywood provided narratives where justice prevailed, love conquered, and life looked glamorous. It wasn't just fun, it was therapy. Escapism wasn't shallow. It was a coping mechanism for millions of people facing unemployment and uncertainty. Third, the structure of the studio system. Unlike fragmented industry that collapsed, Hollywood was vertically integrated. Studios controlled production, distribution, and exhibition. That meant efficiency, steady output, and cost control. They could take risks on big budget films because the pipeline guaranteed audience. Smaller competitors could not survive the depression, so consolidation left the majors even stronger. Together, these three forces explain the paradox. The Great Depression crushed most industries, but it cemented Hollywood as America's dream factory. Movies weren't just entertainment, they became a social institution offering stability when everything else felt unstable. So, what does all of this mean for us today? Why should we care that Hollywood boomed during the Great Depression almost a century ago? Because history shows us a pattern. In the moments of crisis, people turn to stories. In the 1930s, it was the silver screen. In 2020, during the global pandemic, it was streaming platforms like Netflix, YouTube, and TikTok. Different technology, same instinct. When reality feels unbearable, we look for worlds that give us hope, laughter, or even just a break from the chaos. It also reveals something about human priorities. Even when money is tight, people will spend on meaning, on community, on escape.
A movie ticket in 1933 isn't that different from a Netflix subscription today.
Entertainment isn't extra, it's essential to how we cope and connect. And maybe most importantly, it reminds us that industries built on emotion and imagination can actually become more resilient in times of crisis. While factories were shutting down, Hollywood was still rolling film. Today, while many businesses struggle, content creators, streaming giants, and entertainment brands are thriving because they serve the same human need. The Great Depression wasn't just about economics. It was about psychology, resilience, and culture. And that's why its lessons still matter to us right now. But here's the nuance. Hollywood's golden escape wasn't universal. Not everyone could afford a 25-cent ticket. Millions of families, especially in rural America, were too deep in poverty to share that kind of luxury. For them, the Depression wasn't glamorous musicals. It was hungers, dust storms, and migration. And behind the glitter of Hollywood, the industry itself wasn't immune to controversy. Studios tightly controlled actors through restrictive contracts. Creative freedom was limited by the Hays Code, a strict censorship system introduced in the 1930s. So while movies gave audience hope, they also filtered and sanitized reality, presenting a world far removed from the struggles outside the theater. There's another variable too, technology. Radio was booming at the same time, reaching millions for free. While Hollywood sold escapism, radio offered information, news, and the music right in people's home. The Depression wasn't just the rise of film, it was also the beginning of America's mass media age. When we put the pieces together, the story of Hollywood and the Great Depression is about more than just movies. It's about how humans respond to crisis. When economies collapse, when politics fail, culture often steps in. Stories become a form of survival. The Great Depression gave us the Hollywood dream factory. Later crises gave us television, streaming, and social media. Each era finds its own way of turning despair into imagination, and each time, the industry that master attention and emotion don't just survive, they thrive. So the forward look is clear. In a world that still faces economic uncertainty, recessions, and shocks, the demand for stories will never disappear. The platform might change, from theaters to smartphones, from projectors to algorithms, but the instinct remains the same. History suggests that in the next big crisis, it won't only be banks or government that define the future, it will also be the creators, the storytellers, the industry that give people hope when everything else feels hopeless. So the next time you stream a movie, scroll through TikTok, or binge watching a series, remember, this instinct isn't new. It's the same instinct that filled theaters during the darkest years of Great Depression. Stories have always been our way of making sense of chaos. And maybe that raises a bigger question for us today. In the next crisis, economic, political, or even personal, what stories will we turn to? And more importantly, who will be the ones telling them? If you found this perspective thought-provoking, make sure to subscribe to BlackQoral. We explore the hidden history and economics behind the world we live in. And we love to hear your thoughts. What role do you think entertainment plays in times of crisis? Drop your ideas in the comments. Let's build this conversation together.